everyone, I am Rebecca from ChemKnits, and today we're gonna dye some sock blanks. And I wanna dye these both with some horizontal stripes and then some vertical stripes to talk about the difference that that will give you. Now, a sock blank is a knit piece of fabric that was knit so that way you can dye it and unravel it. The blanks I'm going to be dyeing today are Knit Picks Hawthorne double-stranded blanks. They are 80% superwash fine Highland wool, 20% polyamide, and they're double-stranded, which means that there are two strands of yarn knit together. So whatever uneven random striping patterns we add onto these blanks, they will unravel into a matched pair of yarn. So precision is not that important. We're gonna end up with something fun both of the ways that we paint these blanks. This is the 600th episode of Dyepot Weekly. Can you believe it? And because today is a special day, pre-orders for the 2025 ChemKnits Chanukah Yarn Special are now available in the ChemKnits Creations Etsy shop. This is a mini skein yarn sampler that will have wrapped packages for you to open up every night of Chanukah. It is a really fun tradition, and you can head over to the ChemKnits Creations Etsy shop to learn more about this pre-order. And I'll talk about it more at the end of the video. So the blanks are knit as a continuous piece from one end, kind of going back and forth, back and forth, and back and forth to the other. So when we do horizontal stripes, we are going to be creating a section of color that could give us a large stripe on our yarn. And depending on the imperfections, there could be some variegated areas between the different color transitions, but we will still have like a block of color. And you can imagine the progression this way. If we do vertical stripes, now every single color is going to be in every single row. And so we're going to have a variegated and more repeating pattern. And if one stripe is wider up here than it is down here, then at one end of your yarn, you're going to have a larger section of, say, blue than you had over here, which is totally fine, again, because you have the matched pair. So those transitions and things will happen in the same place on both skeins. Now, I've already pre-soaked 4 blanks overnight. I did this so that way, in theory, I will be dyeing 2 with the horizontal stripes, 2 with the vertical stripes, and then unraveling 1 of each. Again, I don't know if there will be swatches at the end, but maybe I'll try to do that. We will see. But before we get started with the blanks, we need to prep our dyes. I decided to be a little ambitious today and go for a bit of a rainbow stripe pattern, knowing that these aren't gonna be harsh stripes, they will blend together. It's gonna be fine. So I pulled Dharma acid dyes in cabernet, saffron spice, golden poppy, forest green, dark navy, and deep purple. This is a combination I've used a few times recently, and I'm very, very excited to see where we go today. I put on my deluxe rubber respirator mask, safety glasses, and gloves, so that way I could measure out some of the dry dye powder and dissolve it in water so I could use that to paint onto our blanks. I could do this with a random amount of dye, and I decided instead to weigh a gram of each of the colors. Even though the water I'm going to be dissolving it into is a little bit random, this way if I run out, I can mix up more that will be close proportion-wise. I'm planning on using foam brushes to paint the colors on, so I did place these cups in a secondary container to help minimize the risk that anything might spill onto our yarn. Here are the 4 blanks we are going to be dyeing today. I'm going to go ahead and add 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 tablespoons of white vinegar, and then work this through. I don't have the amount of water in here measured, and I honestly don't have the volume of one of these basins. I feel like we probably have 8 or 16 cups of water, maybe, would be my guess. But even though I let this soak overnight, we don't need to have that long of a soak with the acid in order for things to work well for us. Since we're going to be using the foam brushes, and those will be touching the blank and going back in. That will conceivably introduce a tiny bit of acid into the dyes, but I'm not worried about that at all. My work surface was already protected with a shower curtain, but since we're gonna be hand painting and then steam setting the yarn, I added a layer of plastic wrap down. This way I can wrap up the sock blanks without areas touching each other and avoiding random splotches of transfer between the different colored areas as much as possible. I took 2 of the blanks and squeezed out most of the water because we will be adding water back in with our dyes. And then I spread them as much as I could while still having them fit well on my countertop. Before we start painting in earnest, I want to check the colors. And also start somewhere in the middle. I think I'm going to want to make each stripe a bit thicker than this. I guess I'm going forward and just doing a whole stripe, but that is a reasonable thickness. We're going to go up this way. Okay, the orange is looking pretty good. See our yellow. The yellow is definitely less pigmented, but still looks really good. The green is therefore going to be way darker. And it's okay. See, like that stripe, I went a little outside. It's okay if things are not perfectly even. Hope the navy is looking purple, and I believe that, oh no, because I grabbed, darn it, I grabbed the cabernet sponge. That would be why. See, I already made a mistake, and it is okay. I swear that this is the actual purple and not the navy. Did I mess that up? No, this has a purple edge. This is the purple. I was like, that's the purple. This is our navy. Okay, the colors are looking good. I think this is about the size that we will be doing of each of these sections. And again, things aren't gonna be completely perfect. But, you know, you see I had that little drip there, but this is how we're going to carry on. And there will be, you can see how the color progression is going to go through the rainbow order. And then there may be like some sections that are more orange and yellow and sections that are more yellow and green. But each row is probably not going to have more than 2 to 3 of the colors versus conceivably having all of them. And so that is our big difference. And you know, see that this, I got some splotches out. Again, since we have 2 strands of yarn held together, little blips and errors, and had I actually mixed up the stripe order, it would have been totally fine. So one of the issues that I was having is that dark navy can look very, very purple until it starts to bind to the yarn. And similarly, the deep purple will look a little bit brown until it really starts to strike. Or right now it's looking almost like gray or navy. So I promise that those colors are there. But now we're gonna need to carry on. But you can see these colors are spreading from where I've put. It's gonna feel a little bit more gradienty than stripe, but I think it'll be okay. Some of my stripes got a little wider, some of them got a little bit wonkier. One thing I did try to do is, since the edges of the blanks were curled under a little bit, I tried to when I'm working on the edge to go fresh into the cup with my sponge, so that way there would be more water, so that way I could hopefully get the colors to penetrate through that whole curl, which has more than one layer of the sock blank. There were for a few drips, a few mistakes, but I think I kept the color progressions consistent, and within each blank the size of the stripes is similar, which means that when I show, if I do a swatch or if I show one blank and then the unraveled blank together, they're gonna be similar enough so that way they are the same colorway, just with some minor differences. I realized that one of the blanks got a little wonky down towards the end, but you know what? It is what it is, and it is fine. So what we're gonna do now is fold over these edges as much as we can. And then we are very carefully, because I want the yarn folded on top of plastic, not on top of itself. We can roll this up. And the good news is that we got good color penetration to the other side. And now I can come in with the steamer basket and we can go steam set this for 30 minutes. And now we add more plastic wrap, lay out the blanks so we can repeat everything for the vertical stripes. With our horizontal section, I was going through the yellow and orange dye much faster than what I was going through with the other colors. And I think that gram per gram, there is way more pigment in cabernet than there is in saffron spice or golden poppy. And so I think that's why I was going through more water, because I was adding more dips, more dye, more liquid to go through those colors with the stripes. And so with these vertical stripes, I actually started with the golden poppy. I knew I could mix more dye if I needed it for this project, but I started approximately in the middle with the yellow and then the orange, and then extended the rainbow in both directions from there. This means that I didn't want the yellow at an edge. The yellow and the orange stand out compared to the depth of a lot of the other colors anyway, and so I thought this would give us the prettiest blank. But again, it doesn't matter that each blank has the exact same progression, because we have those two strands within one blank, and so that is what is important. Once I had finished applying the dye, I folded up the plastic wrap and rolled up these blanks to go ahead and steam set them for 30 minutes. The color progression on the two blanks is not the same. One of them has more orange at one edge, the other has a little green at the edge. But again, it is okay, and I tried to keep things like similar enough that it should be good. The other blank is being steam set in another pot, but this is our horizontal stripes, and I did not flip it to where I could see yellow. I see some yellow. I feel like a lot of colors spread, but that's okay. Whew. Okay, I'm gonna set this aside and let it cool. When the 30 minutes are up for the other blank, I will do the same thing. Let's unwrap our horizontal stripes. Oh, they're still a little yellow. A lot of the yellow disappeared. Although actually the yellow was very orange, so maybe this is appropriate and reasonable. Ooh, it looks like a rainbow bright doll. That's what this is making me think of. Add a little dish soap. That was probably more soap than I needed. I'm really, really hoping for no color coming out. Because see, it's a little bit more gradient-esque than like, oh, there's a bit of white in one of those spots, than stripe. But it's still very, very pretty. And don't worry, we'll take a look at all this dry before I pick one to unravel. I'm just glad that there's no color bleeding, because that's always a win. We got mega overexposed there. All right, so now all I have to do is wash out the soap. Then I need to put the yarn through my spin dryer, wash the rest of the yarn off camera, and let's take a look at the finished blanks. We have our blanks with horizontal stripes and then vertical stripes. And now that we have them here, when you consider that the rows are knit like this, you can see how this is going to give us something more striping. This is going to give us something more variegated and multicolored because each row that we unravel is going to have all of those colors. And I will unravel some of the blanks in a moment. These were not painted perfectly. I could have made the line straighter. I have areas that could have had more dye coverage, but I do think all of these blanks will help me illustrate like what the difference between the direction of your stripes, what difference that'll have on the yarn that we unravel. And just again to point out that these stripes are not straight. I think here, you know, if we go across this row, you can see we've got a little bit of a diagonal skew. Like here, this row is going to be variegated, and here maybe we'll have all three colors. Certainly up here, you can see that like we've got fewer rows there than there. So these are hand-painted imperfect stripes. But if I had made each stripe thicker, then we definitely could have had a more self-striping moment versus a more variegated transitioning gradient kind of thing. But I do think there are some areas where we will have a full stripe that is like one color. Like in our purple, I feel like we've got a row here that's going to be mostly purple. And I have shown what these horizontal hand-painted stripes can look like when they are thicker and definitely have more color in between them. I just tried to fit a lot of colors in here. In a similar, not perfect note, if we go up one complete row here, there is some consistency, but the stripes do shift. This, I guess, more row, like column, will transition between colors just because the lines aren't perfectly straight. But what we will have in each row is a little bit, as we unravel, a little bit of each color. And so I guess the way that the colors pool together will be a lot more consistent each round of, say, a sock or a swatch here than they would be with our horizontal stripes. But now we need to start unraveling things. I know I described what would happen when we unravel the blanks, but I wanted to show side by side me unraveling some of the rows of our horizontal striped and vertical striped blank. On the horizontal stripe, you can see we've got a lot of navy there with those first few rows that I'm unraveling. But with the vertical stripes blank, we're getting a little bit of every color each row that we unravel. And I continued to unravel both of these blanks onto my nitty knotties so that way you could see the color progression that we have from both of them. One where we're going to have a bit of a color progression, some stripes, some variegated sections, and then the other that's just going to mostly be variegated overall. I plan to not just show you what the unraveled blanks look like on the nitty knotties. I wanted to go a step further and make some swatches of each of these colorways. Because again, there's a lot of similarities to the colorways, but they're going to knit up very, very different based on the direction that we hand painted things. And so hopefully this is going to drive home the difference between dyeing a sock blank with horizontal stripes or vertical stripes. And really, by horizontal stripes, I mean in the same direction as the rows, and vertical stripes, I mean across multiple rows. Here we are all unraveled, and the difference between our vertical stripes sort of against the rows that we have over on the right and the horizontal stripes on the left, there's a difference between them for sure, but it's not as dramatic as I was expecting, and that's because our colors pooled. It looks like there are stripes here because of the way the colors pooled as I was winding them onto the nitty knotty. But you can notice that there's like a bit of a diagonal movement to these. We're seeing a lot of this orange and yellow striping in here. and that's because those colors are pooling, and it could therefore give us some kind of micro striping or spiral effect, and could pool in a really, really fun way that I honestly did not expect. I expected the colors to be a lot more random when I wound it onto the Nitty Knotty. And so it's fun to see this spiraling. This is something you can see with dip dyed yarn sometimes. You might get micro stripes or some kind of pooling with it. We do have a repeating colorway, so pooling is not the most surprising thing in the world, but the colors are definitely more blended together, and the green almost disappears. If I zoom in, you can see that it's still there, but because it's blending with the cabernet, the purple, and the navy, it has less of an impact compared to the brightness of that orange and yellow. Our horizontal striping gave us exactly what I expected. We have a discrete striping pattern in here where we can see that repeating rainbow. And yes, there are variegated sections where the colors blend together, but I don't think there's a spot where you ever would have more than, say, 3 colors in a row. Some of the more diagonal sections, maybe we could have 3 colors. Mostly it's 1 or 2. And so yeah, it gives us something striping-esque. And the way that this is going to pool is going to be more predictable, because when you look along at the striping on the blank, you can read that, okay, we have multiple rows here that are going to be yellow. So we'll have a section in our knit item that's going to be yellow. And so that, because the sections are overall longer, that makes it easier to imagine how it could pool in that striping way versus our more repeating colorway where the repeat, I mean, I guess they're both repeating, where the repeat happens on a shorter length scale. It's harder to predict how that might pool, and that's going to depend a lot more on your number of stitches. And so while there are elements between these two unraveled skeins that look extremely similar, they both look very stripy right now. When we have those horizontal stripes, the colors are less blended and are more discrete. You can see them from further away. And they're more blended together on our vertical striped section because of just the way they mix in together. And your eye sort of averages it together, and it looks almost like it was just 2 colors instead of still being 6. I've mentioned swatches a few times now, and I do plan to go ahead and swatch at least a bit of each of these colorways to again showcase the difference. But one final note is that clearly there were differences between the 2 blanks that I dyed in each direction at the beginning. And the nice thing about having that double-stranded sock blank is that when you unravel it, it doesn't matter if, say, one yellow stripe is way thicker than another one in the pattern. Those differences are going to happen at the exact same place. So if you make a pair of socks out of this, as long as you're starting from the same end, those color transitions are going to happen in the same place, and that's going to be very special for your final product. Can you tell which swatch came from which blank? Here we had our horizontal stripes, and over here we had those vertical stripes. Now, if we look at this swatch, which I made bigger because I wanted to get through a few color transitions, we started off pretty solid green, then got little bits of the yellow. You can see we have this variegated section, and then a little solid yellow before transitioning into the orange. And you can see some of that yellow pops in, sort of spreads through, and we're starting to transition into that cabernet. And this is a really fun, like not harsh stripe type of stripe because the colors are blended a little bit. It gives it almost a fade as you go from one section to another. And again, I keep reiterating this, but because we have the 2 skeins of yarn from that blank, these striping sections will be the same size. Now, these swatches were both knit on size 4, 3.5 millimeter needles in stockinette with 30 stitches across. So if you go and make socks, things are going to be thinner than they are here. But you could paint your stripes on twice as thick and get something more like this, which would be really, really fun. Now for our vertical blank, we have pooling here as well. For the first few rows, most of the green stayed along one edge, with our more purple staying at the other. And we almost got these diagonal lines from the way our gold and orange pooled. Now the green is slowly moving its way over, and it's possible that the pattern of the pooling may shift. But this micro striped effect is really cool. And I think that this would look really, really fun on socks. It's just now that we have the swatch, you can see how this is significantly more different than the more gradient, larger stripes that we have on the other one. Oh, and if you're curious about my blocking pins, they're these rainbow knit blockers from Knitter's Pride. If we wanted to compare our swatches to the other blanks that are not unraveled, I think the difference between this blank and this swatch is going to be more different than that swatch and that blank over there. And that's because when I did these vertical stripes, the colors at the edges ended up being a little bit different. Like this one has some green at this edge, and I don't remember what the other one had. And so that could just make the total balance of colors and the way that they pool feel completely different because, you know, this little bit of green here could make, I guess, a different type of impact. Now with this other blank, I guess how variegated you get as you transition between the colors may vary. I think that this intact blank has some sections that are a little more diagonal. You can see on the green stripe on the far left that there's a little bit of a mountain in there. That's going to add to the way that you get the variegated sections. But for this imperfect, sort of fluid kind of striping pattern, to get a matched pair with something that is still somewhat random and blended is really, really cool. And now before I go unravel these swatches once more so I can get ready and eventually sell this yarn, I really hope that you've enjoyed this video and this project. I know that I learned a lot. And it was so much fun to put this together for my 600th episode of Dyepot Weekly. There are currently 2 different pre-orders in the ChemKnits Creations Etsy shop. One of them is going to start shipping soon, and the other is going to ship sometime in November. First, you can go and check out the Mystery 2025 Halloween colorway. There are a few different yarn bases you can pick from, and I dyed the same colorway up on each of them. Those are almost ready to start shipping, and they come wrapped with a progress keeper, and it's always a lot of fun. The second pre-order is something that just launched today, and that is pre-orders for the 2025 ChemKnits Chanukah yarn samplers. You can pick between fingering weight sock yarn or DK weight yarn for your mini skeins, and each night of Chanukah you will have a 10-gram mini skein to unwrap, plus a bonus 20-gram mini skein that was dyed in one of the 8 nights. All of the minis are wrapped and labeled so you know which night to open them, and each night of Chanukah the yarn dyeing video will come out, so you can watch the video and unwrap the yarn in the end and see exactly how the yarn was dyed, but then you can also swatch and play with it yourself to figure out how different types of techniques may work up when you knit or crochet. These Chanukah samplers come with a lot of fun extras that are either Chanukah, winter, ChemKnits, or Rebecca themed in some kind of way. Putting these together is a highlight of my year, and so I really hope you'll go and check it out. Pay attention to the listings on Etsy because the 2025 Chanukah sampler looks like this. I do have a handful of 2024 Chanukah samplers that are now discounted, and those have a different thumbnail. So just make sure you see 2025 when you place your order if you want the upcoming newest one. And just like every year, there are bonus add-on skeins that you can add to your sampler. Priority for those full mystery skeins goes to people who have purchased the sampler. But yeah, the whole thing's a lot of fun. I'll have links for everything down in the video description so you can go and check it out. And I cannot believe that this is the 600th episode of Dyepot Weekly. Remember when I launched 25 episodes in my Kickstarter all those years ago? It feels like so long ago, but I am thrilled that I'm still creating content. And so please subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a new video. I love doing this, and I have so many more colors in my brain and in these hands, and I cannot wait to continue to create more for all of you. I am Rebecca from ChemKnits, and thank you so much for watching.